who legally and constitutionally has the right to make it happen. And he reasserted that rule number one of our unwritten constitution is that Parliament is sovereign in UK law. So it's got to be Parliament that does the job.
And if they lose in the Supreme Court, that is precisely what will happen. But a vote in the two houses of Parliament, by no means a certainty.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting because, as you say, Parliament was actually opposed to leaving the European Union in the first place. Now, most MPs and indeed the Labour Party, the official opposition, say they don't want to block Brexit. They recognise that the British people have voted to leave the European Union. But what they can do, and what the government doesn't want them to do, is to start scrutinising the terms of Brexit. They could say, well, no, we're not going to allow Article 50 to be triggered. That's the process of getting out until we see just what the terms are and how the government intends to try and leave. And that makes things potentially very messy. And some people even believe could get us to a situation where we're looking at another general election.
Carl, thank you. The Bank of England has predicted the return of rising inflation within 2 years. It expects it to hit 2.75% by the end of 2018. Food, energy and clothes prices will rise even faster and wages won't keep up. Good news before that, though. Growth will be faster this year and next than the bank had previously predicted. But then there will be a slowdown. For now, interest rates remain on hold. Joanna Partridge from our business team has the details.
Lunchtime in Southampton. On the menu, pasta and some economic optimism. This Italian restaurant says business has been good since the referendum. And today, the Bank of England said the economy is doing better than it expected. The governor's abandoned plans for more interest rate cuts this year. But he's warning that inflation will hit 2.7% next year.
The bigger adjustment is with households in that real incomes. We see very modest real income growth over the course of next year and into 2018 because of weaker overall activity, the combination of weaker overall activity and the increase in inflation.
Apple recently increased its UK prices by 20%, and some of its competitors have done much the same. We're already seeing this with electronics and electrical items because they're mostly made abroad and imported. So the fall in the pound since the referendum is already leading to higher prices on UK high streets. And this trend is expected to continue next year too. The boss of AO.com says he's already had to pass on some price rises and believes customers planning big purchases should buy sooner rather than later.
I think it's something that we will keep assessing, and the brands will keep assessing over the sort of first half of next year. But I would expect definitely to see over the next 3 to 6 months somewhere in the region of 4 to 5% flow through, which is meaningful for high ticket purchases.
It's not just electricals. Back in Southampton, the owner of La Tavernetta is already seeing increased costs from suppliers.
Wines, for instance, they've gone up a little bit, and obviously food, certain things that we need to buy from Italy, for instance, they have increased their prices slightly.
That means Giuliano is able to keep his prices where they are for the time being. This group of pensioners who regularly get together haven't noticed many changes yet.
I think only with the fuel, but that goes up and down so often. You never know what's going on.
To be quite honest, we have not noticed very much difference at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, but we're not worried at the moment.
The British economy has proved more resilient than many expected. But if wages don't keep up with price rises, next year may be harder. Joanna Partridge, ITV News.
And our economics editor, Narina Hertz, agrees that next year may be harder. And on her blog at itv.com/news, she predicts how we could all feel the pinch in the future with rising food and petrol prices. The soldier who died during a training exercise at an RAF weapons range has been named. Lance Corporal Joe Spencer died following a firearms incident at RAF Tain in the Scottish Highlands on Tuesday. Detectives and the Ministry of Defence are investigating. A father found guilty of murdering his 2-week-old son will be sentenced today. 23-year-old Daniel Sanzoni caused, and I quote, catastrophic and irreversible brain damage to his newborn son Joshua Millinson in October last year. And thousands of extra prison officers are to be placed in prisons across England and Wales in an attempt to tackle high levels of violence and reoffending. Government reforms also include no-fly zones over jails to stop the use of drones, dropping drugs and other items into prisons. Now, the Football Association, the English Football Association, says it's prepared for sanctions if FIFA decide to punish its players for wearing poppies on the pitch next week. England will defy the ban, despite FIFA's General Secretary insisting it could not make an exception for England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, as they're not the only nations who've suffered from war. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne is here with me now. FIFA in a bullish mood.
Yeah, and the FA very much on the offensive as well. The FA told ITV News yesterday that the England players certainly will be wearing poppies on their shirts in some form, no matter what FIFA have said. Representatives of FIFA are meeting them today. It's a scheduled meeting. But one of the top officials at the Football Association told us this morning that the poppy issue is not even going to be on the agenda.
Yeah, poppies won't be discussed today. FIFA, Samura, the General Secretary, has made her position clear. We're surprised. We think their interpretation of their rules is actually incorrect. It's over. We're going to go ahead and commemorate accordingly, along with the Scots and the Welsh, and it won't be discussed any further.
Now, the FIFA General Secretary that Martin Glenn referred to there, Fatma Samura, said yesterday they won't allow poppies on the shirts in any form. Today, though, she was a little less talkative when we approached her.
Do you mind having a quick word with us about the poppy issue today? How do you feel about the FA's defying you, really?
And that was that. I think that's what's described as being blanked.
Well, given blank and bullish FA, do you see any chance of reconciliation here?
Doesn't look like it at the moment. Unless FIFA relent, I think there are three possible conclusions to this. Number one, FIFA could deduct the home country's World Cup qualifying points. I think that's unlikely. Two, they could fine them all. Now, that is a possibility. Or three, the FA and the other associations could dispute the FIFA regulations legally, which is perhaps even more likely. There's a lot of sympathy for the FA here. This is what the Arsenal manager had to say on the matter this morning.
By wanting to be too much politically correct, sometimes you go against tradition and in this case, I think that is part of the English culture that I love. They respect tradition and they respect people who have given their life for the country, and I think FIFA should personally not get involved in that.
I should just add, though, FIFA will only take action if there's a complaint, and if there isn't, this might all go away.
Catch-22. Ian, thank you. Now, with 5 days to go until Election Day, Donald Trump has claimed that he's going to win the White House. The Republican candidate at a rally in Florida last night said his opponent Hillary Clinton is totally unhinged. She pleaded with Americans to try and imagine a world with Mr. Trump in the Oval Office. Someone who demeans women, she said. Someone who doesn't try to pull America together. Our correspondent Robert Moore has the latest from the United States.
They are traversing half a dozen states that will decide this election. Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina and Nevada. All key battlegrounds where the polls show the difference is within the margin of error.
Trump!
Donald Trump has been in Florida, expressing confidence he's just a few days away from becoming America's 45th president, even giving himself some tactical advice.
In 6 days, we are going to win the great state of Florida, and we are going to win the White House. Gonna win it. It's feeling like it already, isn't it? Just, we've got to be nice and cool, Right, stay on point, Donald, stay on point. No sidetracks, Donald, nice and easy, nice. Because I've been watching Hillary the last few days. She's totally unhinged. We don't want any of that. She has become unhinged.
Donald Trump.
And in TV ads, He is marketing this final push not as a Republican campaign, but as an uprising of Americans against the establishment.
Standing together, pushing ahead, leaving the past behind, changing our future. Together, we'll make America great again.
Hillary Clinton has traveled out west to Las Vegas and is trying a new tactic, asking people to imagine what America would be like on January the 20th, Inauguration Day, if she loses.
Imagine with me what it would be like to have Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office come next January. Someone who demeans women, mocks the disabled, insults Latinos and African Americans. What would it be like to have that person in the most powerful office in the world?
As many as 30 million Americans have already voted. That means about 100 million are left to cast their ballots. This country agrees on very little, but few would dispute this is perhaps the starkest choice the country has ever faced, and the most consequential election of recent times. Robert Moore, ITV News, in North Carolina.
Donald Trump's wife, Melania, will make her first speech of the campaign later. She'll be in Pennsylvania, a key battleground state. The last time Mrs. Trump took to the stage in July, you may just remember, she was accused of copying a previous Michelle Obama speech.
That your word is your bond.
That your word is your bond.
And you do what you say and keep your promise.
And that you do what you say you're going to do.
That you treat people with respect.
That you treat people with dignity and respect.
Our correspondent Penny Marshall is in Pennsylvania ahead of Mrs. Trump's first speech on the campaign trail, and she sent us this report on how her appearance might affect the result of the election.
Well, if Donald Trump hoped that putting Melania out there would somehow bring in new support, so far the commentators and the reaction even before she stood up would suggest that's not going to be the result. This election is splitting America along gender lines too, with professional women really being rather snide and mocking of Melania, a former model. She'd be the first lady to have posed almost naked on a fur rug holding a gun. They think that her as a role model for young women is a setback. It's a role model of the past, if you like, when male presidents had trophy wives. But for Trump loyalists, she's guilty of nothing more than being a loyal and dutiful wife to a powerful man looking after her children and exploiting her looks. So you can feel here the two sides vying for centre stage. Trump usually avoids the issue of women. It's one that doesn't work at the polls for him. But if this election was run on gender lines, Hillary would have it if only women voted, because she has a 14-point advantage when it comes to women. He would have it in the bag if only men voted, because he has an 11-point advantage with men. Melania is due on stage early evening. His daughter Ivanka is also campaigning today. Donald Trump is making women the issue of the day. His opponents are saying, bring it on.
Penny Marshall in Pennsylvania this lunchtime. Here, and in a different era, it was often what happened to unmarried women who got pregnant. They were taken in by a church or other religious group and pressurised into giving up their baby for adoption. Those enforced partings still haunt women and children to this day. Now, ahead of an ITV documentary about Britain's adoption scandal, the head of the Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales has said sorry on behalf of his church to those unmarried mothers. Rebecca Barry has more.
1960s Britain, defined by its fashion, music and politics, but this was also an era wrought with contradictions. Just as feminism was emerging, many women were still being silenced.
You were under pressure to give your baby up if you loved him. We were constantly told, if you love your baby, you'll give him up for his adoption.
In 1967, Jill was 17 and unmarried when she found out she was pregnant.
This was the morning we were going down to London to take him to the adoption officers. The expression on his face has always kind of haunted me, because it's almost like he sensed something is going on.
She was one of 500,000 women who had a child adopted in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Most were young and unmarried, and many say they were pressured by the church and the state into giving up their babies.
I think because of the stigma, I mean, there was a stigma of being an unmarried mother, but it was just a shameful stigma to be an illegitimate child.
Did you feel pressured?
I did. I felt there was nothing that I could do to stop it.
At the time, most of the adoptions were handled by groups linked to the Catholic Church, the Salvation Army and the Church of England. Now, the head of the Catholic Church in Britain has apologised for the hurt caused, but for some, that's not enough.
These women's experiences are crying out for scrutiny, for accountability, and I think a public inquiry is by some measure the best way to do that.
Jill was told she'd never see her son again, but eventually he found her.
And it was lovely. Yeah, it was lovely to hear your mother's voice for the first time.
But nothing can make up for the lost years. That's why Jill and thousands of women like her are taking on a new battle to force the government to shine a light on what really happened. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
And watch Britain's adoption scandal breaking the silence next Wednesday here on ITV at 9 o'clock. Our main story, judges have ruled that the Prime Minister can't trigger Article 50 without MPs voting. Theresa May had wanted to trigger it in March. And finally, from one subject that divides the nation to another, a YouGov poll appears to have settled the centuries-old debate on how to pronounce scone. 51% of you said it's pronounced scone as in gone. Only 42% came down on the side of rhyming it with bone. 3% claim they pronounce it in an entirely different way altogether. Vote in our own poll, itv.com/news. That is it this lunchtime. The ITV Evening News is next. From all of us, bye-bye.